Have you ever walked into a workplace and it just feels safe? And others, well, not so much? That's not an accident. It's not luck. A workplace culture that's genuinely safe doesn't just happen on its own. It's something that's designed, on purpose, piece by piece. So what's the secret sauce? What's the real difference between a place where people feel secure and a place that's, frankly, dangerous? You might think it's about having more signs or stricter rules. But honestly, that's just scratching the surface. The real answer goes way deeper. It all comes down to culture. A strong safety culture is like the invisible architecture holding everything up. And here's the best part. Just like an architect's plan, you can actually design it. You can build it. So today, we're going to look at the blueprint for how to do exactly that. All right, let's jump right in. The absolute foundation of our entire blueprint. The very first thing we have to get right is understanding one critical difference. It's the difference between talking at your people versus talking with them. First up, we've got informing. This is a one-way street, plain and simple. It's management making a decision and then just announcing it. Like a memo pinned to a bulletin board or a company-wide email. The information only flows in one direction, down.
But then you have consultation, and this is a whole different ballgame. This is a two-way street. It's a real conversation. It's about swapping ideas, asking for feedback, and actually listening to what people think before a decision gets made. It's a dialogue, not a monologue. Let me give you a super simple example to make this crystal clear. Imagine management just puts up a notice that says, hey, the shift time is changing tomorrow. That's informing. It's a command. But what if they asked, we're thinking about changing the shift. What time would work best for you all? That is consulting. See the difference? It's a small tweak, but the result is massive. You go from giving an order to starting a conversation, and that's how you build trust.
Okay, so once you have that foundation of real two-way communication, you need a way to make it official. You need a structure, and that's where a health and safety committee comes in. But let's be honest, we've all seen committees that are just for show, right? So how do you make sure yours has some actual teeth? How do you create a committee that isn't just about drinking coffee and rubber stamping old news, but one that actually gets things done? What makes it the real deal?
Well, it's not some big mystery. A committee that works has a few key ingredients. First, top management has to be in the room. That sends a powerful message. Second, the committee needs real power, the authority to make decisions and actually spend some money. It can't just be a suggestion box. And probably most important, you have to have a system for following up, because without that, it's all just talk.
And what do they talk about in these meetings? It's not just random complaints. The effective ones, they dig into the real data. They're looking at accident trends, findings from audits, and reports from people on the floor. They're asking the tough questions, like, is our safety training actually working? And how can we get better at communicating this stuff? This is where your safety strategy really comes to life.
All right, we've got our foundation of consultation, and we've built the framework with an effective committee. Now we need to power this thing up. And the way you do that is by empowering your people with the right knowledge and skills through really great training.
Now, when we say training, we're not talking about just sitting through a boring lecture. Real training is a formal process that has two critical parts. First, you get the knowledge, and second, you have to practice it. And that practice needs to happen somewhere safe, somewhere controlled, where it's okay to mess up. Think about it this way. Step 1 is learning how a fire extinguisher works in a classroom. You learn the theory, but are you really ready? Nope. Step 2 is when it all clicks. You actually go outside, light a small controlled fire, and you pull that pin. You use the extinguisher. That's it. That combination of knowing and doing, that's what builds real confidence and skill. And when you get your training right, the results are just incredible. Good training doesn't just teach a list of rules. It helps people understand the why behind those rules. They get the hazards they face, they know exactly what to do in an emergency, and they understand their personal role in keeping everyone safe. It turns them from passive observers into active participants in your safety culture. So now let's put all the pieces together. We've laid our foundation, we've built the framework, and we've powered up the whole system. What we're left with is our complete blueprint for building a much stronger, much more effective safety culture. At the end of the day, it boils down to these 3 simple steps. And the key thing to see is how they build on each other. You start with genuine consultation to open up a dialogue. Then you give that dialogue a home and some real authority with a strong committee. And finally, you empower everyone involved with fantastic training. It's a simple, powerful, and totally repeatable process.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought. Building a great safety culture isn't some giant, overwhelming project. It's really just a series of small, intentional actions. It doesn't start with a big announcement. It starts with a conversation. The only question left is, what's the first one you're going to start?